Okay, so this is the meeting of the Historical Commission on February 13th, 2003. It's the meetings via Zoom. I guess the first thing we should do is take sort of a roll call and see who is here. So I'll do that. Don,
Present.
Joe,
Present.
Rose,
Present.
Leah,
Present.
Gloria. We would say absent.
Mm-hmm.
And
Jeff.
Jeff, is Jeff here? He may pop in later. Okay,
Okay.
so really quickly, I'll say that again, so it's on the record. I don't want to make them wait, but I had a lengthy conversation with Michael Taylor, who's the chair of the Medfield Historical District, Local Historic District Commission. So they're well established with their LHD. We talked about a lot of ideas to save properties, including LHDs. He was really interested in talking about it and helping us. Apparently, he's recruited another gentleman, David Temple, who, Don, is he the chair of the, well, you're on mute. Can you unmute? Don is,
I'm not sure what David is. David will tell us.
Yes.
oh, well, we have it in the email.
He's the president of the Medfield Historical Society.
Okay. Oh, he's a Gloria. He's Gloria. Okay, great. So, Kristen, is it okay to let them in so they can go first?
Yep, I'll move them both over.
Thank you so much.
And Laura, they have the ability to share their screen if they'd like.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Hi, Michael.
Hello, we've been promoted.
Hi, David.
Well,
Thank-
I'll give the full introduction. So the first thing we ever do when we're either writing a town report or we're in some town meeting, we have to explain the difference between the Historical Society, the Historic District Commission, and the Historical Commission. So just like your town has a lot of people wearing different hats, so does ours. So David Temple is president of this Historical Society in town, but he's also co-chair of the Medfield Historical Commission, which is what you are. And I chair the Historic District Commission. So and as I think Laura had mentioned, Laura had given us like 5 questions, and one of the questions talked about the demolition delay bylaw. And do you guys have a demolition delay bylaw right
Yeah.
now?
We do.
Okay,
It's unless
6
and-
months.
it's 6 months
Yeah.
and it only applies to homes on the inventory of historic homes.
All right, and then David, I don't know if you saw it. Can I share my screen just for a moment?
Yes,
Um,
I was hoping you would do that.
so what I was going to show David, if I can find the damn thing. If you go to the Mass website and go to the Mass Cultural Resource Information System,
Mm-hmm.
you can get a listing of all the historical properties by
Mhm.
town.
Yes, we have that. We know about that, but Needham also has its own inventory.
Right,
And
and so we've checked out your historical resources, and we can, if we could tell our story going through. I don't really have to share the screen just yet, but there's always a story to be told. But I thought that David, David would start because and to tell what the Historical Commission has been doing, at least on the demolition delay bylaw.
That'd be great.
I can assure you the demolition delay bylaw has a much greater impact in terms of number of properties impacted across the town, whereas in the in Medfield, we only have 4 historic districts. They're very difficult to get passed.
Mhm.
But the bylaw basically applies to anything. I think greater than 100 years old. But David, why don't you start with, your pitch about, and help to answer the question that Laura had, which was, tell us some of the success stories that are the demolition delay bylaw in Medfield has had.
Okay, that's great. We'd love to talk about the success stories. Do we have to talk about the failures?
No,
No, we don't talk about those.
Okay, well, I'll give you a little bit of background. We've had Medfield has a population of about 13,000. We've had the demolition delay bylaw since 1994, and it was written with it included structures over 50 years old, which would have been something built in 1944 or earlier. And it was a 6-month delay. And we used it, but we found in the early going that we felt we were losing all the cases. They just wait us out. And, so what we did in the early 2000s was to go to town meeting, get it extended to a year. And about that same time, several things happened. First, since we were looking at old houses, we all became much more knowledgeable about architectural history. And I read extensively on it and developed a real interest in it. In fact, one of the members says I'm a frustrated architect. I'm sure I would be more frustrated had I become an architect, but nonetheless, we felt we felt we could do things better. And I talked to a guy who was the chair of the Newton Historical Commission, and he I don't know if he's still on the board or not. I haven't had any contact with him in decades. But he came out and talked to us, and his advice was that we should be much more aggressive in using the demolition delay bylaw to negotiate with builders to and we have better outcomes, and indeed we did. Essentially what he was saying is if you want to, you can use the bylaw to negotiate by saying, if you want to tear this house down, well, we'll let you tear the house down if you preserve this most historic part of the house, and integrate it into the new house. And we had a couple of architects on the board, and they provided some free architectural services, advice at meetings. It was not an office visit, not billable time, but it seemed to work very well for quite a period of time. And I'll show you the success story if I can find the photo and post it. Can I be on screen share?
Yep, you should be able to do it.
Okay.
Dave, you have to go
Yeah.
full, you have to go through the full, what do you call it, full screen, and then it should be at the bottom. You have to scroll down the screen share. You have to take that mouse to the bottom.
I think I got it.
All right.
Yeah. Amazing. This is probably the single best success story that we can point to. It's on South Street, Medfield. It's about a block from the center of town, and that's where all the old most of the old houses were. A builder is, as you can see in this picture, there is a house close to the street, and there's other houses behind it. When what the builder wanted to do was to tear everything down, including and where the houses behind were a couple of barns that were in really rough shape. But we thought the house itself had good bones, and the agreement we got with him was that he would save the front house, and we wanted him to put up houses behind it that were architecturally kind of compatible, at least with what he had up, rather than just going into his catalog and pulling out random house designs. And this is the result, and I think it came out very, very well. And he was happy with the result. The houses sold well, and in fact, after this, he went a little further down the street and bought another old house, and which was on a lot that was big enough to accommodate two houses, a double house. And for that one, we were happy enough with the result that we gave him a historic preservation award, which seemed kind of ironic because it was so often an adversary, but it was a very good time. Unfortunately, like all good things, there came to be an ending. And what happened was that about 2016, I think, I happened to be on vacation at a historical commission meeting, and I was one of the less rabid preservationists on the board, and they had a hearing on what I thought was a pretty dubious 1950 cape, and the more rabid preservationists said, we got to save this. And the vote carried, and the delay was imposed, and the developer was told it was unjust and appealed to the Board of Selectmen, and the selectmen overturned it. So that was strike one. Then strike two was that the town council got into the act, and he showed the people all of us on the historical commissions copies of letters that an aggrieved developer had sent to planning board members 20 years, 30 years earlier, announcing that he was filing $1 million lawsuit against each one of them personally. And they cut their attention, and I don't think it ever went anywhere, but if you get a letter saying you're being sued for $1 million, it does open your eyes. So essentially, he said, we don't have any business doing design review, and what we are concerned with is administering the demolition bylaw, and what if the house does not meet the strict requirements and we let it go, then it's out of our hands, and doesn't make any difference whether the replacement has any relationship or respect for the neighborhood. So frankly, it made the work of the historical commission a good deal less satisfying for me. But on the other hand, I think most of the houses that would be a great many of the houses in the center of town, which are the older ones that fell under that, the over 50 years old, a lot of them look like they're going to stay, and I think there's a little less immediate need for this. We've also considered, but haven't acted on it, amending the bylaw, going to town meeting, and perhaps doing it with the way Needham is doing it, with specific houses on it, rather than the 50 years, because now a 70 split level comes up for review, and we haven't felt the need to save any of them.
You could actually do both. That's what Newton does.
You could do both.
Yeah, so Newton has there's a 50-year-old guideline, and then there's the 12-month delay.
Yeah, we are now at
And they
18
have-
months, by the way.
Oh, you're 18 months
Yeah,
now?
we are. Yeah.
Okay. And you could have an inventory too.
Yeah.
You could list your historical homes, and then you could also say homes, 50 years old or more. But you said 18-month delay. Okay.
We've gone to town meeting a few times for these, and a couple of times we got really blindsided with questions that came from developers that we were not expecting, and it made us a little gun shy about going back, but, and we couldn't sell the, Community Preservation Act either, the town meeting.
Oh, you guys are not
No,
members?
we're not.
Yeah.
And I just got a notice from the, Norfolk County Treasurer, about $1 million. If we,
Yeah,
yeah,
yep. That's interesting.
but
Um,
I think that the political climate has changed in the last 25 years. It moved significantly to the
sure.
right. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's super interesting. Thank you. So basically exercising some, putting a little muscle behind what we're trying to do with these developers, and not just letting them come in and say, oh, I'm gonna do this, and we look at it and go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
We think it should be preserved, and then there's 6 months, like, that's pretty much how we've been. We ask questions and all of that, but maybe we need to be a little more, what? Oh, also, 6 months isn't a lot of time, so.
Yeah.
Another thing, right? 6 months is what you're waiting for your building materials anyhow.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing we found, I would love to have some sort of design review in Medfield. A lot of towns have it. It doesn't apply to single family houses in any of them, but Northborough and Medway have particularly good and helpful design review brochures that I've tried to introduce the planning board in, but they have other priorities. And I'm just not going to be the one to drive the design review.
There was a mention in a conversation I had, it might have been with Michael, that, I've lost my train of thought.
Hey, David, could you release the full screen, the share screen?
Oh, stop it. Yeah, you can stop it. Yeah.
You have to go. Yeah, you got it.
Thank you. Now I can send Gloria what she needs to join us.
Oh, she's gonna join? Good.
Yes.
Gloria Grice?
Yeah, she is
Yeah.
what's her title, Rose, of the Historical Society?
Executive Director.
Executive Director.
Yep.
Yeah. I think there was something else that Michael told me about how this works with you guys.
Well,
Oh,
what
yeah.
so we also actually have something called Historic Property Act that allows owners of historic properties, if they're going to preserve them, to have additional use that would not normally be allowed through zoning. So I'll talk about that at the end, because
Okay,
that can backfire on you.
I know what it was. I remember, don't you have, part of the demo delay process, don't you ask for a review or a design of the actual demolition and plans for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're not supposed to do it. That was we usually get an applicant to offer to show it to us, but we're not supposed to consider the
new property.
new.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
like
figure if
the
they're
way it used-
volunteering it, that's great. I'd like to hear it, but
David, I like the way it used to work, and then I guess some members got a little bit overzealous and
Yeah.
you got your, got neutered a little bit.
yeah,
So
we have had some I think some seriously bad houses built since then.
but can I show something? Let me share the screen and let me take a look at the map. Okay, so this is Medfield, right? Can you see that?
Mhm.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
all those little blue dots, just like your town, those are all the properties that have been inventoried, right? So I'm up here is the Medfield State Hospital that consists of a good 32 structures of a certain age. And then you get into the center of town. Down here, can you see my little arrow?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so that's where the initial John Metcalf homestead was created. We have the Kingsbury Farm Historic District down here near the grist mill. And we have the town center, which is the green triangles. But if you look at all these other blues, they're not part of any historic district. We've tried to create historic districts but it's extremely difficult to do if the residents there don't support it.
Right.
Follow? So when you look at our town, you see all of these clusters of historic homes, and it's kind of logical. You can find places to create historic districts. When you get into your town, right? This is your town.
Michael, can I just ask a question? How do you designate the blues? What's the criteria? Is it the age?
Well, this is on the MACRIS maps.
Oh, Macros. Okay.
Macros.
Macros.
So what we did is we
I see.
hired, it used to be in the early years, look at some of the green, see these green triangles? These green triangles down here were done by volunteers, mostly from the Historical Society, before they really had established standards, right? And
Mhm.
then the town spent, we did it in phases. The town spent money to bring in the PAL, which is a group down Rhode Island, and they went and actually did a lot of the inventory forms. So we went through town and we tried to do inventories of all the properties, but you kind of tell a lot of them are sort of spread out, but when you get into town, they're highly concentrated, right? So we try to do a historic district around North Street and we failed, right? We tried to do an historic district around this side of town near the Peak House and the Clark Tower, the historic Clock Tower, and that failed. But what we succeeded in doing is the Town Center Historic District. And then, by the way, our official position, the Historic District Commission, our official position is that we're not anti-development. We just want to make sure when development occurs, it gets done in such a way that you take in consideration of the historical resources in town. Quite frankly, some of the best projects that have happened in Medfield are done by developers. Particularly right now, we're in the Hospital Farm.
Mhm.
Sorry, I guess I lost it. But in the Hospital Farm Historic District, a company called Trinity is spending about $200 million renovating all those old historic buildings, and you taking advantage of the tax credits. And if you take a look at the guidelines, Laura, did you distribute the town of Medfield guidelines for historic districts?
I
Yeah.
did not.
So
Yes,
the-
you did.
Oh, I
the-
did. Oh, I sent the link.
Yes, you sent the link.
Oh, well, we actually have, let me show you our guideline. I mean,
Thanks,
I
Rose.
did send the guidelines, but if you take a look at the guidelines. So this is our guidelines of the historic districts in town, and that's a commercial property. That used to be the old Will's Hardware store in its Avenue. So if you ever want a great
That's a
place
good
to eat,
restaurant.
it's a great restaurant. So this was done by McCready, who's a developer, and so I think David, you gave him an award for that, didn't you? Or did you not? Yeah.
No, I didn't. We
Okay.
didn't, not that I know of.
All right. So, but without further ado, you had certain questions for me at 7:31. Do you want me to start going through the questions? Laura, you're on mute.
Yes, please.
Okay. Let me stop share and share the screen.
Hi, Gloria.
So these are your questions. So you said perhaps you can share the history of how Medfield created its first and current historic districts, what types of properties, neighborhoods, and how many are included in each. And so basically, we had an initial study committee that was totally land-based when they went to town meeting, as I say, unprepared. They didn't follow. The state comes out with this 60-page or 120-page book about how to do a proper study. You have that book, right? And throughout the book, they're constantly reminding people of opening it to the public and reaching out to the neighbors, all that. The early attempt creating a historic district in Medfield failed. And a lot of people were really upset about it. But it finally passed in 1989. And one of the reasons why it passed is that there was this house called the John Metcalf Homestead circa 1680, which happens to be my email address. And so the people in town were concerned that someone's going to buy the property and knock it down. So the first historic district they created consisted of 4 houses, including the house that Terry and I happened to buy. So we moved to town in 1991, and then very shortly thereafter, the town was also concerned about this whole Hospital Farm historic district area. And there were 23 historic buildings there, 600,000 square feet. They created another historic district. I joined in 1996. And because I lived in the historic district, and this is important, I went and canvassed the neighborhood and talked to all the property owners. And I'm not saying everyone was 100% for it, but when we went to town meeting, every one of the 16 owners of these historic buildings were okay with it. They weren't going to object, and it passed. So we expanded the John Metcalf Historic District to include, actually it's more like 22 buildings, but some of them were new. In 1997, we created the Clark Kingsbury Farm Historic District. And I'll tell you, when you go down there and take a look at it, you see one house and a couple of outbuildings, and that was the historic district in the grist mill. And I mention this because in Needham, you don't have the same kind of concentration cluster of all these historic homes that Medfield does. But that's okay, because you can still create historic districts. You can create a historic district around a house, right? And in 2000, we created the Medfield Town Historic Center Historic District. Interestingly, what we found is the commercial property owners, many of who are not residents, really weren't up there objecting. You might have thought it was the opposite. No, we tend to get the most objection from residents who are concerned that it's like Big Brother intruding in their life. Okay. And then in 2004, we expand the John Metcalf Historic District again because Dunkin' Donuts wanted to buy the old railroad station, turn it into a Dunkin' Donut shop, and everybody in town was upset about it. So someone said, why don't we just extend the historic district to include the Baxter Park and the former train station, and we did. So that's really when that was the last historic district we created. We tried 2 others, one at North Street, and the biggest failure, quite frankly, is the Peak House Historic District. And for those of you who drive through town, they just recently tore down the Clark Tavern, which was a house that Nathaniel Hale from the Revolutionary War stayed at before he went down to New York, part of the Connecticut militia. And this is like an extremely important historical house, and it got torn down. So quite frankly, unless you create an historic district, even through demolition delay bylaws, people can, what do you call it? They can just wait. So do you have any questions first in terms of the historic districts in town and how they were created? Right. Do you have a study committee yourself?
We're working on it.
Okay. All right. So one of the questions, what is the best way to seek support from the homeowners, businesses, owners, from the LHDs? I would say it's extremely difficult to implement without neighborhood support. Ideally, by the way, you don't even have town meeting, right? Don't you have representatives? Tell me how it works.
Yeah. We have representative town meeting.
Okay. All right. But so because anyone in our town can go to town meeting, it doesn't look good when you go to town meeting and residents that are going to be impacted by the district get up there and people are empathetic. But if you can get everyone lined up supporting it, it just passes unanimously. And of course, the most important thing is education meetings. But you have to go through this process anyway as part of your study committee, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Was it difficult for the select board to get the committee members such as the realtor and the architect? I'm curious as to how long that might take. The answer is absolutely not. So it's easy. So I shouldn't say it's easy, but there's no reason. You want, as part of the study committee, to have a broad group of people. you want to have a realtor, you want to have an architect. The Medfield Historic District Commission, we have 5 members, and one of the members comes from 2 nominees submitted by the Medfield Historical Society. Of course, the Medfield Historical Society has nothing to do with town government, but our bylaw says, well, we want the Historical Society to have a representative there. So we have one from the Chapter of the American Institute of Architects, one from the Massachusetts Board of Realtors, and one from the Planning Board. So it's not like you're stacking the deck with a bunch of history people. And this is unlike the Historical Commission, David, because you don't have any of these requirements, correct, David?
Right.
Yeah.
No, but the issue, Michael, is with the nomination of the architect and the realtor is up to the select board to go reach out to do that.
Right.
So that's sort of, I was just wondering, like, is there red tape with that? We have
Yeah.
everybody else.
No, I think, but I think personally, you could help to facilitate that. If you had a realtor that you knew that wanted to be part of it, or if an architect. Actually, what the biggest problem we had is one of the architects on our board ended up getting hired too many times by developers. So would constantly have to recuse themselves. So I think you're better off having people that don't always have to recuse themselves. But it's nice to have an architect. It's nice to have a realtor on board. Okay. We spoke about demolition delay bylaws. We just talked about that. And do you have any advice for us on how to better preserve historical properties in addition to creating a local historic district? And so what the town attempted to do is we implemented this historic properties bylaw. It's part of zoning, right? And the purpose was to preserve historic structures by providing a regulatory process to enable property owner to increase the productive use of the property, right? So, if the property is historical and
What does that mean by increasing the use?
well, I was going to say, like, for instance, the Board of Appeals upon application may issue a special permit to the owner for any use or combination of uses listed in the table of use regulations. The decision whether, what it basically allows them to do is they could take a one, let's say the Clark Tavern has, maybe you could have had 2 units in it. They're putting 5 units there. So it allows more economic, the developer can put, if the developer can put 5 units on a piece of property where normally you can only put it in 2 and agrees to preserve the historic property, right? He gets a special permit through the ZBA that allows him to do it.
I got it.
Got it.
Thank
And it gets complicated. You have to, but anyway, so this is something that in theory should work on paper. In my opinion, it didn't work. David would probably disagree with it, even though Dave and I wear similar hats, go to the same church. We don't always agree on everything. Okay, so that's that. And can I just shift just for a second and go back to, let me stop sharing. And I want to share your what happens is, okay, bear with me. Don't you love Zoom? To go to a different part of the computer, I have to, you almost need to get a degree, to be able to load documents up, right? Anyway, actually, I can't find it. I got out of it by mistake. But so when I went through your town, right, and realizing, Terry and I used to live in Jamaica Plain, and we actually looked at a property in Needham to buy, but we bought one in Medfield as well. And by the way, I also should thank Needham for, you have an organization there called the Bay Colony Rail Trail Association.
Mhm.
Now I'm a board member, and if it weren't for your organization, what Needham did, we would not have a rail trail in Medfield. So we just opened up our 1.5 mile rail trail. And so you have some great people in Needham. But what I was going to say is when I went through and took a look at where your historic properties were, I didn't see the kind of concentration that we have in Medfield. Maybe they're not all inventoried. There were like 3 clusters around Great Plain Avenue. Like you have a Great Plain Avenue cluster around Central Avenue, another Great Plain Avenue around Marshall Street, and you have one just before Olin College, right? So if I'm just looking at your raw data and thinking, where might you put some historic districts, that hit me as areas that would be nice to preserve, as well as a cluster along Maple Street. But it's not like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like you drive to a certain section of town and you got 15 historic houses all lined up. Is that true or not?
Gloria? You could speak to that better than anyone.
You muted? She doesn't look muted.
Yeah,
No,
can you hear us?
okay. Well, anyhow, shall I try then?
Sure.
Okay, however, when Gloria gets the computer to work the way she wants to, then she can correct me. We have the Macintosh district, which is a Great Plain and Central Avenue. And that is a cluster of houses that are on the
Very nice. Yeah.
nationally recognized. But we have lost one of those, unfortunately. We've lost 2 of them, actually. More than that, Gloria? No, we've lost 2 of them. But we really don't have the kind of concentration that you have in Medfield. I don't think. You can,
What about the town center, Rose or Gloria? I mean, there's some, no?
no. The Kingsbury block was on the inventory, but it's gone. It burned down. And the town hall, yes, but that's
So, but the thing is, that doesn't, what you could do is you could, if you know some of the owners of some of those historic properties, you could create a very small historic district, particularly if the person wanted to become part of it. That would be okay. But if you get,
We actually have one person who has come forward with his home, which is what's prompting us to create the LHD because of him.
you can also that individual can put in what they call a preservation easement. They can, it's much stronger than a historic district. You see, in a historic district, you only have say in what can be seen by an external outside the from a public way, external architectural feature. I know Nantucket very well. I'm part of the Nantucket Advisory Committee on this one part of Nantucket. Everything in Nantucket is part of an historic district. The problem is the Historic District Commission has 0 say on what happens in the interior of a building. So you get these gut rehabs. And even though the exterior of the building looks really nice, people will buy these properties and just destroy them. So this individual that wants to be part of a historic district, are they on the National Registry of Historic Places, do you know?
no, they are not.
Yeah, but they can certainly apply for that. And that's more of an honorary thing than anything else.
Exactly.
And but you could but they could put a preservation easement on the property through not through any town organization, but through I don't know, a third-party organization. I don't know if Historic New England would do it, and they would they could take a tax deduction for doing it.
But it does cost a considerable amount of money to do it. Am I correct? And what we want to do, this is the oldest remaining house in the zip code. And we would like it to be preserved, and the owner would like to have it preserved. I mean, he has information in his will, which isn't going to stand up at all, and he knows it. So that's why the local historic district of a single house is, it seems to be the most reasonable way to go.
You can definitely, you can definitely do it. Mass Historical will tell you, no, you really shouldn't do that. You should look at the, you do the analysis, take a look at the inventories, come up with these clusters and blah, blah, blah. And that's what we attempted to do when we were trying to save the Clark Tavern. And then at the end, when I was talking to Mass Historical, I said, geez, your requirement that we not just do a single house. And then they said, well, that's what we would like, but it's okay to do a single house.
That's what they told us too.
Yes.
So if you have someone willing to do it, that would be great. Create the historic district and start out small.
Right. Okay.
So what other specific questions might you have?
Yeah, so those were just mine I tossed out. Is there anybody else that wants to ask a question about anything?
I have one very small question, can be answered yes or no. Are you going to go back and try to get the Peak House put in as a single building for an historic district?
No, because the Peak House is part of a museum right now.
Right.
It's owned by the Historical Society. Is that correct, David? And the odds of the Historical Society ever tearing it down is extremely unlikely. So we're not
Okay.
particularly concerned about the Peak House, and the Clark Tavern's gone. Although if you do drive by there, you'll see a replica of the Clark Tavern, which looks pretty nice, but it's not historic preservation of any sort.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I should also mention that a lot of the impetus for historic districts really came from houses being torn down. We've lost lots of resources in Medfield over
Oh
time.
my goodness. That's exactly what's happened in Needham. So
Yeah.
but unfortunately that takes a while. So I think we also have to consider the demo delay bylaws here and do something about that too, because it's very easy for a builder to just come in here, wait 6 months and off he goes. There's no age requirement.
Why don't you do it concurrently? There's no reason why you couldn't do a 16-month, 18-month demolition delay. At least go for a year.
Well, we will, but the select board didn't want to do the LHD and the demo delay at the same time. And you know what? This town is, there's a lot of developer activity. So I think that has to be handled sort of in a separate way.
Okay.
But we're aware. I wish Gloria could talk because maybe she would something else to say.
She can dial in.
What can we do? I don't know. Gloria, is there anything you want to say? Can you put it in a chat box or something? I don't know. There's no chat box.
Box.
But
And
you
you're
know,
now, you have muted yourself again, Gloria.
Doesn't help.
Hey,
yeah.
Dottie, you know,
Oh, gotcha.
Now it's
Wow.
working?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
This has been 2 weeks of technology hell. I will explain later, but everything has gone wrong.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, I was busy taking notes. So what was the, I'm sorry, what was the question?
I just wanted to know if you had anything to add or anything to ask before we let these guys go.
No, I really appreciate this,
Yeah, so
this
it's
background. Yeah, but yeah, and you were right, sort of, you were right about the clusters of where the houses lay out. There are a couple of very valuable, more isolated structures. But there are also a couple of very interesting 19th century clusters.
right. You have some nice Victorian.
That have sort of integrity of, they were sort of created at the same time for the same purpose, and they're all still there. So encapsulating something like that is a possibility as well.
I think that's part of
They're
the,
not a lot of, there's certainly only a handful of 18th century and um, early 19th century houses left.
but
Gloria,
still. some that
where is your
should-
museum? Do you have a museum, an actual building for the
We do.
Historical Society?
We do.
Okay.
We're on Central Avenue, in front of of the Newman School.
Okay,
The buildings were moved to that site in 2005. The farmhouse was actually the house next door that was rescued. Both houses are demolition rescues. And then the schoolhouse, which is now attached to it, comes from a site about 2 miles down Central Avenue toward Newton.
Good.
There was a schoolhouse and it was moved off, it was turned into a little house that was moved off site when a builder wanted the property. And he held on to it until we could move them together. So the houses themselves are, excuse me, mid 19th century, but yeah, we're actually just on the fringe of the Macintosh Historic District.
Gloria, the other thing that Medfield did is we got the town to buy the Dwight Derby house circa, we thought it was 1652, but after doing Denver chronology, the oldest piece of lumber we could find was 1699. Everyone wants their house to be the oldest. But whether it's, we sometimes say circa 1699, but anyway, we are concerned the house is gonna be, converted into a tavern or torn down or whatever. And so the town bought the house, I think, and then a group, the Friends of the Dwight Derby House, raised the funds to restore it, and we got Mass Historical Funds. And it's a beautiful gem and it's a historical piece of Medfield. So you, in theory, in Needham, could do the same thing, that you'd have to get a group. It would have to be an important house, right? That was in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, we don't even have the Historical Society. We have, I think the archaeological guys have a room upstairs in that house, but we basically use the house as a gathering place for meetings, and you can even rent it out.
I know, I've been there, it's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could, I wonder if there would be places in Medfield, in Needham like that, and whether Needham would have the appetite to buy it.
Yes and no is probably the current answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think convincing the town to buy the property would be a pretty heavy lift. Though we have been talking, the oldest house in town was purchased by Babson, and they have done nothing for it in the last 10 years. So whether they have plans for it or are planning to just let it fall down, or it's not entirely clear, but
Did they give that house to you?
I don't know. I don't know if they're inclined. It's even hard at this point to know how much of the original material is still there. I think the structure, the original structure, the walls and the framing, I think, are probably pretty solid, pretty authentic, but my guess is the interior has been gutted more than once since 1707. But yeah, I think they sort of bought it to extend their property and then really had no purpose for it.
Is it near the rink? Is that where they have it? The skating rink?
It's just as it's as you head toward their campus. It's on a little street called Forest Street.
Okay.
Do you know where Volante Farms is?
Yeah, I know that Forest Street.
Okay, well, Forest Street, yeah, so you keep going up Forest.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's a little brown salt box. Well, there's 2 first period houses in Needham, and the other one has been pretty extensive. I mean, the core of that house still survives, but it's been pretty extensively renovated and added to since.
Well, if there's anything we can do, and good luck on your on your effort.
Thank you.
If
you.
there's anything we can do, just give us a call.
Great.
Thank you. This has been really helpful. We really appreciate you guys sharing your time with us and all of the information.
But by the way, the last time we did it was with Foxborough and they created their historic district.
Oh, see, your good luck charm.
Well, good luck.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
But
Hey,
So,
David.
Hi, Gloria.
Well, so that was interesting. They have no, I found it interesting that they have they don't have their own inventory of historic homes. They only have macros. But they deal with that. They deal with, preservation in a different way, I guess, with their demo delay bylaws. Okay, so the next,
They have an age-based system.
yeah, I think it's more than 50 years old.
Yeah, something like that.
And they have an 18-month demo delay, so that slows things down a little bit for people. So does anybody have any comments or questions about that presentation? Okay, the next thing would be the approval of the minutes. I sent them out. Gloria, do you have any comments?
No, I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't have.
Okay.
I was not at that meeting. So Rose took the minutes for that meeting. I came in just as he shared that.
I have everything
Document.
before that.
Okay, because I'll take over.
Yes, I've stopped taking notes as soon as your face appeared.
Oh, excellent. Okay, good. Yeah, so just send me what you have and I'll
Okay.
get on to what I've got, but yeah, so I had.
Great. Okay, so do we make a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th?
No, not December 12th, January
Oh,
23rd.
shoot, that's wrong in the agenda then.
Yeah.
You're right. Kristen, how do we correct that?
You'll have to make a revision and send it to me.
Of the agenda?
Correct.
Sorry about that. So it was January 23rd, Rose?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the minutes of January 23rd?
I have a minor comment
Oh,
on the
sure.
minutes. My name's spelled incorrectly. It's super minor, but both the
No, it
Wokovich and the
isn't.
Cordy part
No,
are
no,
both
no.
spelled incorrectly.
No, it is not in it. Oh, my goodness, I left out the E. Sorry about that.
And there's an
fix
extra T in Wokovich.
Oh, my goodness.
No, that's important.
It is extremely important. So,
Rose, can you fix the date as well for me? On the,
the date on the minutes themselves is correct.
no, the date where it says on number 2, approval of December 12th minutes, can you change that to approval of January 23rd?
Yes, but doesn't Kristen want to have the new agenda sent to her?
Right, but we have to fix it first. So can you just make the change while you're changing Leah's name? Could you just make the change to the
Sure.
approval? Yeah. Please.
Yes. And I will send it to you then.
Well, I'm gonna be in Israel maybe you can send it to Dawn. I'm gonna be away for 2
Yes,
weeks.
that's right. You're going tomorrow
I don't
morning.
want to slow anything down if Dawn doesn't mind or somebody else.
Okay, I will fix this.
That's
Yeah.
fine. Get it off to Kristen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
Okay, so do we make a motion to approve the minutes?
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
can I make a motion to approve the minutes?
Sure.
Oh, in that case, I move. So do,
With the changes as we discussed.
with the changes, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll second.
Anybody else want to? Is that it?
Yeah, we
We
need to
just need
vote.
1 second. We need another.
We
Okay.
need to
I,
vote.
I was not in attendance, so I don't think I can.
Yeah, that's right, Joe.
I'll second or whatever I need to do.
So now we take a vote. Dawn,
Yes,
Rose,
Yes.
Leah,
Yes.
Gloria, were you here?
No. Abstain.
So, and I vote yes. Is that enough? One,
We have
two,
4.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yes, it is.
okay, great.
So 4-0 with 2 abstentions.
Yes.
And no Jeff either.
Yeah. Okay. 2 abstentions and 1 absence. Okay.
Okay, so the next item is the update on the local historic district and the nominees. All I know is that, and from what I understand, they're still looking for a Realtor appointment and an architect appointment. I don't know, Dawn, or if anybody else has any other information on that.
No,
And on the website there, under volunteers, there is also a request for a citizen to come
Citizen.
forward.
That's right,
Yeah.
and that large person, you're 100% right. That's correct.
So that's 3.
That's 3.
Great. So Gloria was nominated and Dawn was nominated.
And the vote is, I think, tomorrow, right? Such like select board meetings tomorrow.
Yep, tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Do they have other nominees? Do you know, Kristen?
No, so that they're on as appointments, so approve the appointments for Dawn and Gloria.
Okay. Okay. Great. The next thing is the update on the Foster House. I have none. All I know is that the developer was supposed to come to the January 24th select board meeting, and that was just taken off the agenda.
Mhm.
That's all I know.
Hmm.
Anything on Hillcrest Gardens? Haven't seen anything in planning board minutes yet, though I didn't check this past week. Does anybody know about anything about that? That's the old nursery.
He is going to require a zoning change, I believe.
Yes.
2/3 vote in town meeting.
Does he have to go before the planning board or the?
Go to the
zoning-
planning book for the planning board, get it put onto the warrant.
Okay,
And assuming the planning board agrees to send it forward.
Hmm.
and we don't know when that meeting is, do
And
we?
then it needs a 2/3. February, doesn't the warrant close pretty soon?
Yes, it does. I don't have the date. but
Closes
it's-
tomorrow night.
Okay, is it on the warrant? Do you know, or can you
I
say?
want to say yes. It sounds familiar.
Okay,
I'm gonna pull it up right now and look.
Thank you, Kristen.
Okay. Did anyone attend the Eastern Mass Historical Commission Coalition webinar?
Yep.
Oh, yep, sorry, Rose.
Oh,
Oh.
I did, and Leah did.
Oh, good.
I'll give a brief thing.
Sure.
First of all, it's really exciting because this coalition is not, it's new to Eastern Massachusetts, but one already exists in the western part of the state and the middle part of the state. And the whole point is to bring groups that are concerned with historical preservation together. And there are 2 groups. One is Mass Historical Commission, Jen Doherty.
Yep.
One is a private nonprofit organization called Preservation Massachusetts. And the third is the regional, the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. And I think we all know what Jen Doherty's group does. But I think there were one thing that came that I found very interesting is that she asked that towns update their MACRIS listings
Mm.
because Mass Historical Commission depends on MACRIS as much as we do. And
Mhm.
so we have, for example, the Mills House on Great Plain Avenue is not noted as demolished. So that's a to-do thing in case we needed one. But the purpose of Mass Historical is to support Mass historical preservation. Or the purpose of this whole coalition is to support historical preservation throughout New England. Preservation Massachusetts, which is the nonprofit, is actually doesn't get any state funding, does it all with donations. And what they give out a year is about 100,000 in grants for things that are practical, like maintenance. And they also have an archive of recordings about maintaining historical buildings, which I think is really, really nice. And this is a very practical thing. And then the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission wants to support smart growth and regional cooperation. And there are 101 towns in it, in this group. And I don't know whether Needham has representation
Yes,
there
they do.
or not. Who is it? Do you know?
Used to be Mo, I don't know who it is right now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Was Jerry years ago, Mo. But yeah, Needham is heavily involved with the MAPC. In fact, they're doing an arts and culture consultation right now.
Oh, excellent. And in fact, MAPC has a website called Metro Common 2050, talking about what we're going to look like in 2050. When I won't be here to see it, but do a good job, folks. Anyhow, this was the very first meeting of the group, and the second meeting will be on June 6th, commonly known as D-Day.
Don't read anything into that.
What was that?
But don't read anything into that.
Don't read anything in that. No, exactly, exactly. Anyhow, Leah, what would you like to add from this? This was your first go round with this group?
Yep. And it was an interesting thing for me because I found out about it through a coworker who is involved in her historic commission in Milton. So she threw it my way. And so both for work purposes and for the purposes of this commission, it was a good thing for me to attend. You took way better notes than I did, Rose, as far as who everybody was. I mostly just listened, but a big takeaway for me that I personally found interesting, both professionally and for our town, is the question at the end about the stretch code and the impact of energy efficiency and all of the codes that are about to go into effect and how it impacts all of our towns, especially residential and historic properties, because in past versions, they've essentially been exempt. And now, unless you are I get the terms all messed up, but like an actual preserved historical landmark, then you fall into the stretch code unless it's a tiny building or the addition is really minimal or the renovation is really minimal. So that was something that came up as a topic that a lot of attendees wanted to learn more about and might be a topic for one of the future meetings. So that was one takeaway for me that we can either use to our advantage in this commission, because it's going to make it harder to do some of these renovations now for developers, but it also makes it a more sustainable project if you do it. So it's just a conversation that my firm is starting to have, and I think a lot of towns and architecture firms that have anything to do with preservation are having more and more now.
Yeah.
Sure, Don.
I didn't attend the meeting, but I saw the video, I watched the recording of it. And one of the things that struck me too is and it's become sort of a theme for me, is how do we get support for what we're doing? So sort of expanding that friend group, and whether it's getting involved in organizations like this coalition, other historical commissions, or even they mentioned during the presentation this gap, which I think occurs probably in all of the towns in Massachusetts, the gap between the planning board and the historical commission, to get those working more closely together so that when issues do come up at the planning board that there is at least something in the back of their brains thinking maybe this needs to involve the historical commission.
And I think there are some communities that do that better than others. Brookline has a very strong presence in both their planning board and their historic commission, and they do seem to talk to each other. But I know a lot of communities don't have the same resources that Brookline has.
Right.
But that is one community that I know of that seems to have closed the gap a little bit, but I'm glad you brought that up, John, because that was another one that perked my ears up a little bit too, is that disconnect that a lot of us seem to have.
Yeah. And you know what might be helpful is the creation of this study committee, since one of the members will be somebody from the planning board. That could be the start of maybe greater cooperation, or at least understanding about what each group does.
Mhm.
Right.
That's a good
If I
point.
could add a couple of things, just from where I sit, in my professional life, that to parlay off what Leah said, the new stretch code, I don't know if, I mean, I know Leah is familiar with it, that did just come into effect, which is the energy efficiency. And amongst the contractors and builders I regularly talk with, when we read those new regulations, the first thing we all said is like, we're going to be doing a lot more renovations than new builds,
Hmm.
or even additions for that matter, because the you know, I guess what division is it, Leah? I mean, the Department of Energy Resources, it's the national. I mean, they really swung for the fences on the energy code on this one. I mean, to a level where I met with my installation company on this project I'm doing now, and her eyes are just like, it's like everyone in that industry, their heads spinning. I mean, the R values that they're requiring are just, I mean, it may be a blessing in disguise for every historic commission in this state of Massachusetts.
Do you-
Because
do you- go ahead, finish.
no, that's all. I mean, I just from what I'm saying, like, I mean, the R values and what's going to be required for a new build or even an addition, or Leah's point, like right now, it's generally if you demo an interior, if you're demoing more than like 50% of the interior space, you have to bring the whole facility up to code. Which in these old houses, there's just, even with like closed spell spray foam, which has a vapor barrier in it, and you get much higher R value than like an open cell. Even on, I mean, all these old houses are all, you know, some of them are 2x3 walls, some of them are, you know, 2x4 walls, but none of them are, you know, right now current code is, you know, 2x6 walls. You can't, even with the highest level of insulation out there, you can't get to the R value with a 2x4 wall. It's just, it's impossible. I mean, what is it? Is it R40, Leah? I think now on walls, they want R60 in ceilings and roofs, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking like 2x12s, like, or double studded walls that are blown in insulation that are, you know, 16 inches thick. It's incredible.
Wow.
It's basically passive house for new builds is what you have to head towards in order to hit a lot of these numbers. They're not requiring that for the historic structures, but previously
Right.
where historic structures really just had to prove that you weren't making it worse and you were slightly improving what was there before, now there is a new benchmark that you have to hit based on how much you're renovating or how much you're adding. And the benchmark is only like 10% less than the new code, which is so much more stringent than where we are now. I think, Joe, we're at like R30 walls and R42 roofs right now for
Right.
residential. I don't do a ton of residential, so that's why I don't know the numbers as well. But yeah, they're increasing that, and it's continuous insulation, which a lot of these old structures can't
Do.
accommodate.
Mhm.
So it's a lot, and the glazing is huge.
Yep.
So you have to replace your windows, and they have to be super high efficient windows, which is an expense. It's a lot. The industry is reeling right now, as you said.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
what is the advantage of a renovation then?
you don't have to abide by the strict requirements of the new stretch code. So, for example, like I'm doing this restoration / renovation on this 1920s Victorian in West Roxbury right now, and we selectively, you know, demoed rooms in the home. So like the bathrooms, the kitchen, we're putting a new mudroom in, but we're, of the overall 4,000 square feet, I think we only demoed, quote unquote, probably 1,000 square feet of it. So we don't have to abide by the new stretch code. And even if we did, even if we demo the whole thing, like I wouldn't demo, to your point, or to my point earlier, I wouldn't take on that project if I knew I had to demo the whole thing, because like I would have to fur out the walls so much that you'd probably lose 1,000 square feet of the house because you'd have to fill up the cavities with so much insulation.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't make any sense. So as a result of that, I think you're going to start seeing, people who want to take on projects or build an addition be like, you know what, or hey, let's buy this house, let's knock it down. They may really think twice or three times about doing that because, they can't even, the pricing on some of this insulation layers, hasn't even come out yet. And then to Leah's point, I know a builder did a passive house up, a new build up in the North Shore, and they got these triple glazed windows from Germany, and they were almost over 6 figures just to get the windows, and they had to ship them in. Someone bought it, but like you're talking about a very small percentage of people
Yeah.
of that where that everyone knows, like in the 1.2 to 1.8 range, and Needham now, which is crazy, it flies off the shelf. You're talking about people that are, when you're building a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot house that has all this stuff in it, you're pushing $3-4 million. That buyer pool is pretty small. So again, it's going to make developers think twice about, do I really want to do this? Maybe
You're effectively doubling. If you're sort of the standard tear down new build is now in the 4,000 to 5,000 foot range,
right?
Selling in the 2 to 5 range, you're essentially gonna add 50 to almost 100% to the price of the
Right.
house.
But correct. But the big thing about it is now that, someone who's this on, say take Needham or Wellesley, or take Needham. All right, I can. Someone may say, I have the ability to spend $2 million to 2-3, but I want a 5,000 square foot house. But you're not going to be able to find that 5,000 square foot house now because of the setback rules. They can't build it because now your walls have to be this much thicker. So your interior space is going to be 3,800 square feet on that same exterior footprint because your walls got to be 2x10s now instead of 2x6s. So you're losing square footage. When you start stacking that up, every room is that much smaller. So I literally the new stretch code just came out, I think,
When is
2 months ago.
Yeah.
It's effective right now.
So you say
anything-
interior demolition has to stay below 50%?
Yeah, that's kind of that's what the
Or it's the whole thing?
it's in that range there. It's on or about that range right now on existing residential structures. You start running afoul of numerous issues with electrical and plumbing. Anytime you start, demoing, if you keep 2 or 3 rooms, you demo everything else, the town or the city's going to be, you got to bring everything up to code, including, stretch, the installation code.
Well, that's like.
But that's a discretion.
20 years
That's a
ago, when to make
discretionary
the
thing.
footage, when make the footage, you'd like leave a corner in the chimney and build out the, keep the footprint
Exactly.
on the chimney and build the rest. Now, okay.
So
When-
Joe, who monitors this? Like, does the building inspector supposed
Yeah,
to person?
you have the building. So like, when I'm doing, various inspections, you start your electrical and your plumbing rough inspections. Those get signed off, and then you get a building rough inspection, make sure everything's framed right. And then you have your do your installation, and the building inspector, the building department comes back out to inspect the insulation and fire blocking, all that. And then you can finally close up your walls. So like in a lot of these, I've talked, I know a lot of the inspectors, and even there, some of them are like, man, this is aggressive. It's really aggressive. And I think some of them, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see how this kind of unfolds over the next 6 to 12, 18 months.
One clarification that I just wanted to make is that it's for anything that permits after they tried to hammer home the date and now I forget, it's June or July. So
Okay,
there's also gonna be, probably more for me professionally, there's a huge push to try to get projects
Rush
permitted
the permit,
before
yeah.
that.
Mm.
Because there is no, like, usually if there's a change to the code, there's some overlap where you can kind of choose which way you go. There is no overlap period here. It's once that date hits, if you're not already permitted, you have to follow the new stretch code. So right now, people are trying to wrap up projects, grab projects where they can, get it all in. And then come June or July, it's going to be a new process for everybody.
it's actually online. I mean, there's a lot, I just Googled it. There's a lot of information there, but so you guys, that's like super interesting. And I think part of what we talk about every month should be any kind of updates or any kind of information like that, that that we don't know. Because we're lay people when it comes to this stuff, and that's, as Joe said, I mean, that could make a big difference. I seriously wonder, doesn't that involve some training for the building inspectors? I mean, it seems like there would be a lot of preparation for that, right? That they'd have to go through, or no?
To a certain extent, I mean, right now, I mean, it's very formulaic with regard to like, on all new builds, it's pretty much all spray foam.
Yeah.
And spray foam is, if it's open cell, which means there's no vapor barrier in it, you're getting so much R value per inch. And it's closed cell, which means it has a vapor barrier in it, you're getting, that much more per inch. So it's really just a mathematical thing. So, in order to get that R value, you just got to build your walls thicker.
Right.
So if they're looking at them and it's, it's kind of smooth. So there'll be, I think with the building inspectors, it's more them. I mean, I had to read through the new stretch code regulations 3 or 4 times before, just to kind of, process it and digest it, what they're trying to get at here. And one of the big things I look at, because a lot of, 99% of my work is renovations, restorations of existing homes, is kind of like, okay, how does this affect me?
Mhm.
So unfortunately, right now, I'm lucky that it doesn't, but at some point, you start getting into the whole historical aspect of it, right? You got all these towns in New England or Massachusetts with beautiful homes, and if people start saying, hey, listen, you have to do this with old homes, you got to fur out your walls, you're not going to, all these houses are going to go into disrepair because it's going to be so egregiously expensive, and no one's going to give up the internal real estate in their house, because you have to fur out your, hey, I want to do my kitchen over, but I got to fur out my walls by 4 inches all the way around. No way. Yeah, exactly, Don.
It might
Yeah.
make footprints bigger, which is not a good thing, right?
Yeah, but then you start getting
because
into
you got
setbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get setbacks. So then they're non-conforming. Then you have to go to ZBA and get it. So, I think, and that is more of I mean, that's a hurdle that, every builder I know tries to avoid. Trying to do development with stuff that's by right is generally where everyone kind of tries to point.
And it's going to make projects like the Foster House, I'm curious to see like what happens with the developer and how they're going to manage all of those properties. But even putting forth proposals like trying to keep the house and turn it into townhouses or smaller units or something like that, it makes that proposal that much more complicated, because now that house would need to be brought up, because you would have to take apart enough of the house that you would probably fall into the more than 50% in order to put units in it. And then now not only do you need to bring it up to ADA requirements, you now have to bring it all the way up to stretch code. So the couple of $1 million that we talked about before in order to bring it up to code is now going to be probably 2 or 3 times that, because of the work that it would take. So it's just an interesting thing on how those projects are going to shift, if you're going to see more of that because people aren't going to build ground up, or are you going to see less of that because it's going to take that much more to convert these historic houses? I don't think anybody knows yet.
Yeah, it's a real double-edged sword because
Hillcrest Gardens can be interesting. That will be an interesting one to see that, because I've seen those plans for that development, but this is all, those were done all pre-stretch code change.
Yeah,
Hmm.
And they need a zoning variance, right? So they're not permitted and likely won't be before this
Right.
goes into effect. So they're probably gonna get hit with it.
Hmm.
Unless they move fast.
Right.
well, they can't,
And give
because
it-
they can't move any faster than May, because they can't do anything until town meeting meets.
Right.
Sorry, that building is ugly as sin, so.
Wow, that was really
And I
interesting.
said that in a public meeting, sorry.
That's great. Thank you for that feedback. That's really,
Yeah, because that's gonna be scary and interesting in the next couple of months, because renovating a historic house. It's gonna be very hard to maintain the historic fabric. And it's also gonna be, it's gonna be costly to tear it down, it's gonna be costly to renovate.
And
So-
it certainly has all sorts of implications for the Tolman Gay House. And the plans to remove so much of the later addition to the house.
Yeah, that was gonna be a big addition project. You asked about that, Rose, is there any movement on that?
Not that I know of,
You haven't seen?
No.
Because I thought you said,
except that there has been some of the shrubs around the house have been taken down.
but no permits have gone,
Not that I know
no
of.
permit requests, because we haven't heard anything.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
the next thing is, we've got the Lost Needham presentation slide deck thing. Like, I'm not sure where that stands, Gloria, with you were gonna.
I have to apologize, neither of these got any further. I've been out of. I've
Okay.
had no internet service for the last 2.5 weeks,
That's okay. That's okay.
and everything has just gone to hell.
That's all right. No worries.
Yeah,
Same with the Heritage 3 project, I'm guessing. Yep,
yeah.
no worries.
So I do have the contract now, so I can pull out the deliverables and see what the list
Okay.
is.
All right,
So add me to next month's agenda again.
that's easy. I just leave it. I'm trying to think, is there any new business? I'm not. I mean, I think we just have to see how this LHD thing plays out. Obviously, if one is created, you can see how active these people from Medfield are in trying to get cooperation from neighbors and whatnot. So that's something, once we get this, I mean, we need to think about that. We can't just sit here and wait for someone like Mo Handel to show up and offer his house. We need some outreach going forward if we want to keep doing this. And I will tell you that if I'm still on the committee next year, because I think my term ends in June this year, but one of my, I'm sorry?
It's an appointment for life.
I'll never forget the first meeting about the CPC appointment, which has been great. But my point is, the next topic for me, and I know I won't be the chair anymore, but I'll be making a lot of noise about it, is changing our demo delay bylaws, because they are just not helping at all. And, you know, even looking at, I'd like to maybe think about driving around this town and looking at, as you said, Gloria, maybe not listed houses on the inventory from 18 whatever, but there's a lot of lovely homes here that
Mhm.
maybe, you know, maybe a little bit newer than that, like maybe, you know, I don't know, early 1900s, but they have such character, which is what makes, I think people like this town a lot, is that it's kind of homey looking. They've got porches. I mean, you know, if we put a year restriction, we would be able to save those houses, some of them. So that's a big thing for me. You know, it's clearly a committee or commission thing. It's not just me. But in our next cycle, I think we really want to save some houses. We have to do more than just an LHD. They take too long. So that would be my new business idea for next year.
But they could also be a little synergistic once you're focusing people's attention on preservation and the benefits of preservation. You could extend it to a broader discussion of, what we talk about the benefits of preservation and the sense that the town has some sort of stability of fabric. You move into a neighborhood and it's going to look pretty much like that. It's not going to have a parking lot. It's not going to have a shopping center built, it's going to have a consistent, you'd like it to have a consistent look. Extends to newer houses. I mean, it's not only 18th, 19th century houses. My personal feeling is the 1920s were the golden age of residential construction. Houses that had,
Right.
they were more or less, they started to be modern in the sense of having, conveniences, but really had still some integrity of structure and some nice detailing, and they're really very congenial houses.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And those are all getting lost because they're not on an inventory.
Yeah, because everybody says, oh, they're not old. It's well, they're a century old now.
Yeah.
We have to broaden the scope of what we want to protect.
Yeah.
So,
But also part of that discussion is why.
yeah,
Why we need to protect it. And I think as we, get more intensively into this LHD discussion and create those arguments about the importance to the town of preservation, we could incorporate that broader view of what should be preserved and what the benefits of preservation are.
I agree. And just, when I was when Don and I went to the select board to discuss this topic of the LHD, I mentioned that as another way to preserve property, and it's in their minutes. So it's not like, what are you talking about? Like it's already on the record. Okay. Hopefully I have the next meeting date right. It's Monday, March 13th, 2023.
Mhm.
Yep.
And I
Yeah.
guess we'll poll everybody to see. Kristen, when is the lifting of do you know when you can't do the hybrid meetings anymore? Do you know if there's a rule about that coming out, or?
April,
So as of April, every meeting has to be in person.
correct.
Okay,
Unless something changes, but we'll keep an eye on it.
okay. So for March, I'll poll everybody and see what everyone's thinking. I think in person's better. It's just like with all the stuff going around, it just seemed better to do Zoom in the winter.
Right.
Yep.
And also for someone who has to take an international flight tomorrow, it's better to have you on Zoom.
Yes, it is. I can't be around all you germy people.
No offense taken.
No offense intended.
I have lots of germs in my house right now, so I'm glad I could spare you.
Children, okay, so can we make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Do I take a vote? Or are we okay?
We do have to vote.
Yeah.
What? I second, third. Aye, yes.
Aye.
Aye,
Hi.
Aye. Okay, great.
guys
Unanimous.
have it.
Thank you
Aye,
all.
all.
Thanks, Kristen.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night, thanks.
Night.
See you guys soon.